Okay, let's get started, I say. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us in our webinar this morning. And we have got the lovely Eric from Sutton's Motor Group, who is going to be talking us through their onboarding experience. But before we start, let's have a chat about employee onboarding. So congratulations, you've all come here today because you're interested enough in employee onboarding. When we launched HR On Board in 2013, onboarding was barely recognised as a space. Today, it's a totally different story. Employee onboarding is very topical and seen as a discrete and separate part of the HR lifecycle. So why has it become so popular? Competition for talent. Despite high unemployment rates right now, so in October, the Australian unemployment rate sat at 6.9%. down from the 7.4% that was in July, certain sectors have been less impacted by competition for talent that remains tight. In those sectors, according to IBISWorld, sectors that outperformed during COVID-19 include food retailing, construction services, telecommunication services, insurance, superannuation funds, computer system design services, and social assistance services. In those services and others that will be rebuilding and repositioning themselves in the coming months, recruitment will be a key focus, along with a natural progression into onboarding. There's a focus on streamlining back office operations. So operational efficiency, it was a bit of a mouthful, is a goal of any business, and traditional onboarding is very time consuming and inefficient. Employees are looking for alignment to their values. They need to understand their brand and EVP, plus continuing the story from candidate to a new hire, ensuring ROI on recruitment dollars. But in saying that, there are still a lot of challenges. So who actually owns onboarding? There's no clear functional area. It's multidisciplinary and functional tasks. The rise of technology to assist everyone. Everyone now says that they do onboarding, but it's really important to realize what your requirements are to make sure it's a match for what software you choose. A module in an all-in-one may only do 50% of what you require, whereas a best of breed, something like HR On Board, can do 85%. So which one do you choose? Teaching managers the importance of a great new hire experience. Hiring managers hold a lot of importance in the process. People leave their bosses, so how team leaders onboard new hires is critical and an ongoing challenge. So why should you care? There's a lot of efficiency wins, so let's have a talk about some of those. There are two sides of onboarding. The drive for efficiency in the back office has really driven the progress of employee onboarding technology. So defined and understood workflows. Using onboarding technology really helps you understand the business rules, conditions, and logic around all your onboarding processes. Good onboarding technology allows you to represent those processes in the software. Once they're defined, you can then optimize them to create greater efficiencies. As an example, we have a large government organization who is one of our customers, and pre-HR On Board, they had a dedicated kitchen for all their onboarding paperwork. So you can imagine how time-consuming that would have been. Improved time to productivity. Better onboarding means new hires hit the ground running. This might mean that they have system accounts already set up prior to day one, key access, a laptop, etc., etc. Also, they may have already done part of their induction and mandatory training before day one, so they can really hit the ground running when they arrive. Reduction in errors and manual handling. Handwritten forms, manual data entry is just a breeding ground for errors and poor data capture. We hear huge amounts of stories from our customers about ineligible handwriting written on the tax forms, information not being validated, transcription errors into the payroll system. This all creates wasted time in chasing people and follow-up. New hire visibility and feedback. Having central visibility over all your new hires' feedback and processes and where they're up to after they've accepted their offer, completed their tasks and done their paperwork, it really does reduce the follow-up and puts everyone on the same page. The new hire feedback is great for efficiency. They're the first ones to complain if something is inefficient or it takes too long to do something prior to being onboarded. You need to take this feedback and improve, and we'll show you how the feedback and what that shows from the new hires a little later. So what are the employee experience wins? Apart from the obvious efficiency wins the benefit gets to the new hires, it also includes sometimes they are a little bit hard to measure. So let's have a look at the great experience and retention. I like to say efficiency processes result in engaged new hires. And certainly the comments we see from new hires in our app really back this up. A good first impression and experience within the company improves retention in those first critical 12 months. Alignment with your company culture and your values. Creating onboarding journeys through the first year or 6 months of your culture really ensures alignment that creates stickiness. You've worked so hard to go and find this talent. It's really important that you ensure that it stays around. If it doesn't, then obviously people, if it doesn't align with, they will actually leave your organization. We have another customer story. Zappos is famous for offering new hires $2,500 to leave if they found that the organization and the culture didn't fit them. So they actually found that it was better to have those new hires leave their organization than stay around if they weren't actually happy. Early immersion in meaningful work. If a lot of the admin and pre-onboarding and onboarding tasks are taken care of quickly, you can get people doing meaningful work a lot faster once they've joined. Another example of this is Facebook. Facebook are famous for letting their new developers actually write code and get it into production in their first week of joining the organization. HR visibility and insights. Using tech for onboarding allows HR to understand how new hires are engaged, content, tasks, and surveys. Freedom, who are another one of our customers, found all the cool swag like shoes and t-shirts for new hires. Whilst it was liked, it wasn't actually as important to them as Freedom actually thought. What was important to the new hires was essential new hire automated tasks and streamlined, that all their systems were set up and ready to go from day one, because that was causing the major frustration for those new hires. But really, they had to ask the new hires first what those pain points were. So create feedback loops to improve your experience. Don't rest on what your process is. You need to be continually improving to making sure it's as amazing as possible. So we've talked about feedback loops and onboarding and how it's all become mainstreamed and the wins and benefits you can get. But how do you actually achieve that? So one, you absolutely need to use technology. Technology is a must to ensure that this process is as efficient as possible. But two, you need to create and make sure your onboarding incorporates all these amazing starts or these amazing elements for that new starter journey. So let me explain to you a little bit about HR On Board and how we create amazing employee journeys. So HR On Board, our passion is all about creating amazing new starter journeys from the beginning of their life cycle. So we are a dedicated or a best of breed onboarding platform. So we live and breathe and talk onboarding to our customers all day, every day. So it really allows us, because we are a best of breed solution, It really allows us to go deep into the space, and we know really what's best for our customers when it comes to their onboarding experience. So we're an Australian-owned company, part of the ASX-listed Elmo Group, and we all live under one roof in the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. So we have a really fun team, we're disciplined, we're adventurous, and we're fun. So we're also really proud of our ISO 27001 certification around information security, which was achieved in 2016. So obviously within HR, we handle a lot of sensitive data. So it's important to have practices, frameworks, education in place to ensure that all of that data is kept safe. So with over 7 years of experience in the onboarding space, as we've grown, the depth, maturity and capability of our software has too. So what do? We manage that full employee life cycle from hello to go with 4 different modules. So let me break down those modules for you. The first module is our job offers module, and this is all about pre-boarding. So it's about compliance, sending out the job offer, contract, forms, provisioning, payroll integration, and most importantly, compliance. It's a lot of organisation, and we find the ROI for our customers is huge in this space. As a dedicated onboarding solution, we can handle really complex requirements around contracts, provisioning to ensure that everything is ready for day one. After your new hire has accepted their job offer, we then send them on what we call an onboarding journey. And this is really around induction, and it starts from the minute they accept that contract right up until their first year anniversary. By drip feeding small bite-sized pieces of content and information, it's all about immersing your new hire in your culture, your values. Why is it so amazing to work at your organisation? And this content is sent out pre-day one, on day one, and after day one. These journeys can be used not only just for the new hires, we actually have loads of different types of journeys. We can do journeys for office moves, we can do journeys for parental leave. It is really becoming quite common for our customers to use these onboarding journeys other than just for new starters. Our next module is all around transitioning, or what we call contract updates and letters. So this is all around your internal staff who may have been promoted or seconded. So sending them a new contract update, or potentially you may have policy updates that you need organisation-wide for people to acknowledge. So that's where those smooth role transitions enter into HR on board. And then most importantly is offboarding. You need to ensure that if someone's being onboarded amazingly, that their experience of being offboarded is exactly the same. So this is all around deprovisioning of that person and collection of assets. So process and efficiency will actually reduce the risk of things such as data leakage, access to systems, fair work issues by having well-defined and automated offboarding processes. With the average tenure is reducing now in organisations to around 2 to 3 years, you need to ensure that when people are leaving your organisation, that they are being advocates for your organisation. So as an example, Vodafone, who are one of our customers, if they're having people leave their organisation, they really will want those people being customers as well. So ensuring that that offboarding process is as streamlined as possible. So we have some pretty cool brands that work with us at HR On Board. We look after all different verticals and industries, from blue collar to white collar, from health to aged care, from local to federal government. So there's no limitation in terms of the organisation that we look after. We do look after all different sorts of industries that come into HR On Board or have an onboarding issue that they would love HR On Board to assist. Now, being a best of breed onboarding solution, we sit in the middle of payroll and recruitment. So we're pushing and pulling data to those platforms. We do have open APIs, so we can absolutely assist with regards to ensuring there is no double data entry in that process of being onboarded. So here is some of our ecosystem and our platforms that we have integration with. So don't worry if you don't see an integration that you're currently using a recruitment or payroll provider. It's not here. It's not that we won't have any integration with. It's probably just more so that we haven't actually found a customer that requires the integration, or maybe the integration is really, really old, and in which case we can't build an integration for. So what are the elements of a great onboarding journey? So when you're thinking about an onboarding journey, you really need to think about a coat. And I'm not talking about a fur coat or a faux coat. I'm talking about your culture, your objectives, the administration and team that all play a part of an amazing onboarding experience. So after speaking to hundreds of customers and studying all of the leading companies that use HR on Board, we came up with 4 categories around what makes that amazing experience. So that's the culture, the objectives, the administration and the team. So let me break these down. So culture, we're talking about how you put your values, your vision, your culture forward, not only from the company, but from the team they're joining. So this might be a company message from the CEO, a list of your vision and your values as an organization. It may include meeting heads of department and the CEO as part of that onboarding experience. Your objectives and expectations, ensuring that that new starter understands their position in your organization, what their role is, what their career progression potentially could be, more information about the company and the team and the role that they'll be doing or that they were hired for. What is their career path? Is there a career path at your organization? And what is their expectation of the role? Administration. This is all about the necessary administrative provisioning and compliance tasks to ensure that this is all set and completed prior to day one. So things such as IT access. Do they need a laptop or a mobile phone? Do they need a uniform? Has it been ordered and is it ready for day one? Team is all about how do you integrate that new starter into the team and the people they'll be working with. So this includes building team relationships and includes messages and contact from the team leader. So creating an amazing new hire journey involves all these elements and weaving them into a tapestry over that new hire period. So breaking down that coat, here's a sample of some tasks and actions to look at. You'll notice that the admin has quite a lot of tasks, and this is not unusual because typically there is a lot of administration that needs to happen in order for that person to be set up prior to day one. But the foundation of any great onboarding is nailing those boring bits and making sure that they're completed to day one, so that all those other fun bits, such as the culture and the objectives and the team, can really flow through and be the star of that onboarding experience. The big story around culture is making sure that the messaging from the recruitment, so the minute that person applies for a job and is told about the culture of your organization and what it stands for, is really followed through this whole experience. So the pre-onboarding, the onboarding, right up until that first year anniversary. People love to join organizations that align to their values and beliefs. And I know this is definitely within HR on Board. It was something that we had when we were looking for new hires. They made sure that the people coming into the organization were really aligned to their values. So it's really important for you as an organization to keep reinforcing that culture, your brand and your unique style to the new starters that are joining your organization. So what are the results of an amazing onboarding experience? So rather than just obviously the impact of what that experience is having for the new starter, There's actually another massive impact, and that on the board or on the screen here is really around some environmental impacts. So as you can imagine, the process and paper required to send out for an onboarding experience, so the contract or the tax forms, all those sorts of things, you know, can be quite high with regards to the impact it would have on the environment. So these figures are coming from a combined savings of all of our customers over a 12-month period. So that process of preparing and sending out the job offer, the contracts, the forms, and coordinating the collection of all of that data required has absolutely been totally transformed. There's no printing, as you can imagine, there's no postage, there's no scanning, there's absolutely no double data duplication, and there's fewer errors, obvious benefits to that onboarding experience straight off the bat. However, what our customers say is that the largest benefits are actually realised in the most scariest resource, and as you can imagine, that's time. So here's some stats again in terms of what having an automated onboarding experience can provide to potential customers. So we found that 40% of new hires are now actually accessing and completing their job offer actually on their mobile device. HR on Board is mobile responsive. Everybody has a mobile device these days. So the minute they get that contract, they can quickly and easily complete that. It is actually only taking 42 minutes for candidates to complete and accept their job offer. So accept that time or compare that time to when somebody is actually completing a job offer manually. They have to print that job offer out, they need to write that information, they need to sign it, they then need to scan it and send it back. You know, that is definitely going to be a lot longer than those 42 minutes that our customers are experiencing with HR on Board. And within the app, we are seeing, or our customers are seeing, that there is a 94% positive feedback. So the new hire feedback can really give you an insight into the often intangible ROI of your onboarding process. So it's a smoother transition for the new hires. It's competitive hiring. You're going to get the best candidates faster and wow them with the technology that you're using, rather than potentially feedback or technology that a competitor might be using. But also it's going to set the tone for your team culture and modern practices. So that's enough about HR on Board and who we are. So now I'm going to pass you over to Eric, and he's going to explain about Suttons and their onboarding experience. So I'm just going to make you the host now, Eric.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just share my screen.
While that's happening, guys, hi, Ashley from HR on Board. Feel free to jump into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screen. If you have any questions throughout, I'll be sure to answer them. Yeah, thanks. Okay,
thanks, guys. Thanks for the introduction, Nat. And I'm really pleased to be able to talk to you today about the Suttons Group and how HR onboarding has helped to transform the, I guess, the new hire experience here at Suttons. For those panelists that are based in Sydney, you probably would have heard of the Suttons Group. You know, we've got the big franchise out at Rosebery, Suttons City, and the original site, Suttons at Homebush. But for those of you outside of Sydney, you're probably wondering who the hell are the Suttons Motors Group. So let me give you some facts and figures about who we are. Okay. Here we are. So we were founded in 1943 by Sir Frederick Sutton. We are a family company, okay? We've got approximately 400 employees, and we operate basically in the Greater Sydney area. So that's why people outside the Greater Sydney area wouldn't have heard too much about Suttons. The company's run by Laurie Sutton, who is the son of Sir Frederick Sutton. He's the Laurie's the managing director. And Laurie's two sons, Craig and Ryan, are the executive directors in the business. As you can see, we in the calendar year 19, we turned over $1.13 billion from the automotive business, so it's not a small organisation. Today, we represent 21 different brands of cars and trucks throughout 15 different motor vehicle and truck dealerships. So as well as sort of selling cars and servicing cars through dealerships, we have a very successful auction house called Auto Auctions, which has been in the family portfolio for some 50 years now. We have a parts distribution centre based out at Lidcombe, which sells parts to service centres all around Australia, and a vehicle logistics centre based out at Wetherill Park, where all our cars go once they get off the ships down at Port Kembla before they get sent to the dealerships. We've also got a training centre out at Sydney Olympic Park, and our head office is in Woolloomooloo. So on a personal note, I joined the Suttons Group in June 2018, and I've recently taken over the work health and safety responsibilities for the group. I remember rocking up to my first day and sitting down with Craig and Ryan Sutton, and they said to me, "All right, Eric, here is a blank sheet of paper. Tell us how HR should work at Suttons and then make it happen." So it's a bit daunting. So what I did was I jumped in I think at the time was a CQ90 Infinity, which we were selling, and I went around and I visited all the dealerships and talked to all the general managers, the dealer principals, about their perceptions of HR. And what I got out of it was that HR was seen as the people who fix up the dealership mistakes. They virtually had no credibility, and the oldest serving member of the HR team had started 4 months before me. So we were just completely at ground zero, or even lower than ground zero. There was clearly a lack of understanding of what HR can do to the business. So what we did, we set about a process to say, okay, where should we be and how should we be working with our stakeholders? HR had always been centralised, and so we set about a process of decentralising it. So today we have 3 HR business partners who are virtually on the road. They service between 5 and 7 dealerships, and a HR coordinator who, amongst other things, runs HR on board, but I'll talk about that later. When I joined, there was one HR initiative that Suttons was starting to look at, and that was to try to improve the onboarding process. And the reason they were looking at that one, because in calendar year 2018, 550 people started working at Suttons. And when you think about we've got 1,400 people, that's a huge number. Our staff turnover was 35.3%. So everyone saw that, if we don't get our onboarding right, it's not, Suttons is going to be a place where you come, stay here for a little bit and then disappear. We're not a McDonald's. We don't have 50,000 people, so we're not that complex, but we have a few sort of unique requirements in that onboarding process, and which I'll talk about today. So this next slide will be nothing new to everybody. This is the typical onboarding process at Suttons. Candidates get interviewed. If they're successful, they undergo medical, visa and police checks. Employment contracts and associated paperwork are sent to candidates. They accept, return the paperwork, and the candidate starts. Fantastic. Nothing there to worry about. So, what were our challenges? So, we have a number of employers or APNs in our group. In fact, we have 9. So we needed to be able to have systems in place that could cater for these different employer groups. Slow time to productivity. When we did the analysis, we found it was taking up to 3 weeks for people. By the time the contract went out, by the time we got it back, it was about 3 weeks. The big one for me was that in 2018, 1 in 2 new hires started without a signed employment contract. And that was a major, major risk to the organisation. And the fourth point was a bit of tech skepticism. I mean, when you talk about tech skepticism, you got to remember Suttons is a family company, and technology we're talking about 2017, 18 was like, well, we can sell cars. We're doing a good job. We don't need too much help. I'm pleased to say that today, that whole mindset is different. In fact, we have a saying around here at Suttons, you're either green or you're growing or you're ripe or you're rotting, innovate or die. And we need to be innovative if we are going to be successful. So the challenge was, what can we do with onboarding here? So when I joined, Suttons was actually looking at an onboarding system. And I said, that's great, let's sit down with the vendors and we'll start to go through it, And as I worked with the vendor, what we found was that particular vendor could not handle multiple employer groups. And to their credit, they tried, they looked at things, but in the end of the day, it didn't work. And so I had to go to the board and say, guys, look, nice company, great company, good product, but it won't work for us. The challenge I had was Suttons had already made an initial investment in the product. And so I had to convince the board that we need to write that off and we need to go back to market and find a system that works for us. So we went to market, we looked at a number of systems, and we actually talked to 3 providers. And in the end, we chose HR On Board. So why did we choose HR On Board? I can see that everyone's just anticipation with excitement. Here we go. So I was looking for a couple of things. Obviously, the key thing about multiple employer groups, they were able to do that. And just bear in mind, we have 9 employers. We have 4 different types of employees that start with us. We have 2 awards, we have non-award, and we have apprentices. So we effectively needed 36, and this is why the old vendor couldn't do it. They wanted to give us 36 templates of contracts. With HR On Board, we've only got 4. They're easily able to adapt to the different employer groups that we have. We also wanted to improve the efficiencies. When we started the process of onboarding, we had 1 employee full-time who was handling all employee contracts. Today, we've probably got someone that does it 1 hour a day. And the efficiencies in the contracts have been unbelievable at the moment. Enhance the employee experience. We've had a number of employees, and I'll talk to about the feedback that we've been given later, but I can tell you that the employee experience using HR On Board, and this is not a paid advertisement, has been fantastic. They've said, someone said something, one of the best onboarding experiences they've ever had. And when we look at seamless implementation, we didn't want to having backwards and forwards meetings with vendors and stuff like that. HR On Board took our requirements, spec'd it up, and virtually went away and came back and said, here is the system. We did some user testing and away we went. The other really cool point was that they were able to provide a seamless integration into our payroll system, which is Preceda. In our old days, we used to have to give a hard copy of the contract to payroll, and then they would read the contract and just extract the data they needed into Preceda. Now we just give them a file, they look at it, and just hit bang, and it goes straight into Preceda. So it's been a great journey for us. And I just want to share with you, Nat talked earlier about the mobile technology of HR On Board. We do virtually everything with the contracts here by mobile. So just to give you an idea. So an email goes to the new starters saying a contract's on its way. We have a little spiel about who we are. They are welcome to Suttons. They can look at their contract online, and to Nat's statistics, yes, over 40% of new starters accept their contracts over mobiles on their mobile device. They can do that. They accept. They enter a code which enables them to give them the contract. Once they accept, we say, welcome aboard. And that's that whole engagement piece that is starting with the employee. This is really some cool stuff that HR On Board do. Once we know where their location is, it tells them where they go and eat. And then we can start engaging them about who we are and about our values. And we get all that, we can do all of that before they walk through the front door. So when they come through the front door, they know what our values expectations are, they know what the behavioural expectations are, and they're already thinking, I'm already a part of Suttons before I walk through that door. Oops, sorry. So some metrics. We've gone from contracts, from onboarding going from 3 weeks to under 48 hours. When I say under 48 hours, what I mean is by the time that we send the contract to the individual in less than 48 hours, not only have they returned the contract and accepted it, they've also given us all the paperwork, the super, the tax forms, all that comes back to us straight away under 48 hours. Right? I've talked about the employee experience. We've had some employees say, and I've got text them to say, this is one of the greatest onboarding experiences I have ever had. Right? Or this was really simple. I can't believe it was that quick to get this done. The reduction in resources. I mean, as I said, one person full-time to one person an hour a day. And that's great because we can now deploy that resource to do other sort of more value-added things to HR at Suttons. It's not only helped on the HR side, but also on the payroll side, because now the payroll don't have to go through 550 contracts, because they now get a file. Payroll can now do other things and do more value-added stuff for Suttons. Better reviews experience of the HR team. I got to tell you, my team tells me the day we get rid of HR on board is the day that they will all walk out because they do not want to go back to the days where we have to have a person full-time doing just contracts. More effective metrics and reporting. One of the things that we've noticed, and I got to say, it's not all HR or HR on board. If I talked about our staff turnover, calendar year 2018, 35.3%. October 2020, 23.6%. It has dropped by a third. HR on board can't take all the credit. HR team can take all the credit, but no, we can't do that. But I got to tell you, having employees better engaged when they join has shown us that people will stay longer. I talked earlier about in calendar 2018, 1 in 2 people new hires start without a contract. HR on board went live in July 2019. By the end of 2019, that 1 in 2 became 1 in 10. And July 2020, onwards, not a single person has started without a signed contract. And that's all due to the process that we've been able to adapt with HR on board. One last thing I'd like to add is about bolstering the standing of technology within the business. And this is probably, maybe Sutton's thing. I talked earlier about, being a family company and sort of the reluctance to embrace technology. It was a risk for the directors, and I got to tell you, it was a risk for me, and whether or not I'd still be here if it didn't work. But the directors, having seen what HR on board has delivered to the business in terms of efficiencies and values, we are today in the process of implementing a new technologically based work health and safety system, a new contractor management system, and we are also implementing a brand new dealer management system. Now, I'd like to think, and look, and the directors say that we've done a great job with HR on board, and I'd like to think that part of that outcomes with HR on board has helped them to see what technology can do to their business. We're not a giant corporate, where all those decisions come from head office. We're playing with the family's money when we are going out and asking them to invest, and they've seen the ROI and they've seen the value that HR on board can provide. So that's the Sutton story. Like I said, this is not a paid advertisement. It is a real truth of, what HR on board has done here for Suttons. And look, everyone has their own unique requirements, but I can tell you for the Suttons Motors Group, HR on board has delivered in a way that, we are happy to espouse, what they can do for us. So thanks for the opportunity to share the experiences with you guys today.
No, thank you so much.
Well done.
I guess a few questions, Eric. Was it difficult building that business case? Because we do find, I guess, some of the organizations that we speak to, we are speaking to potentially the person where that pain point is with the onboarding process. So there may be a junior staff member in the HR team. Like, is it difficult to get that business case created and then presented to the directors?
Look, not really. There was some key, again, because I was a new kid on the block, I had to ask around, what are the pain points for the directors? What's the pain points for the board? And it was all about showing the ROI. There was an investment to be made, but it was just showing that with the efficiency savings and how we then can create the time savings to help deliver a better HR initiatives to the organisation, they decided to say, okay, let's see if this works. And as I said, it was, the first 6 months the numbers were pretty good, but the next 6 months the numbers were great, and so yes, we were able to deliver on what we said, but for the Suttons, it was all about the ROI and convincing them that's the ROI, that's what we will deliver.
Right. And in terms of your HR staff now, like, what are they? So you had one person doing contracts all the time. Like, what other tasks are those people doing now that the administration of your contracts is so greatly reduced? Like, what HR tasks could they not have done before or completed before? So what are they doing? What are they enjoying
Okay,
now?
yeah, sure. So when we had one person doing the contracts, and the only thing the rest of the HR team were doing was employer relations stuff, fixing up other people's, let's call them, mistakes. We have now got, we've been now able to implement apprenticeship mentoring schemes. We do now group-wide recruitment, where previously each dealership was doing it by itself. And now, with taking on WHS responsibilities, in fact, the HR team are now involved in WHS because they've got the time to be able to do that. Previously, none of that could have happened because no one just had the time to do it.
Yeah.
And then creating sort of the metrics. And again, it goes back to every month I report to the board the metrics, and they can see. I mean, when you can see staff turnover go from 35.3 to 23.8, that in itself is enough to say it's working.
It's working, yes.
Yeah.
And would the majority of your workforce kind of be sitting in that, maybe that younger age bracket? What's their feedback like and because everyone has a mobile device basically in their hand most of the day, like, what was that feedback like in order, in terms of them having this amazing experience?
Okay, look, interestingly enough, our workforce is not that young. Our average age of employees is 38.8. We've got almost 10% of our workforce has been with us for over 20 years. Right?
Wow.
But everyone has said, about the experience has been great. Yes, the younger people do it all the time, but it's even the full age spread have said it's a great experience, And the one thing that we have found is that back in sort of 2018, our biggest challenge was people in the 0 to 2 year tenure gap, particularly in the 0 to 6 months. Right? And we are now seeing more and more people are now clicking over from the 0 to 2 year to the 2 to 5. The people are staying longer. And I got to tell you, for the 15,000th time, HR on Board, I think, has played a role in that.
Oh, that's fabulous to hear. So, I mean, of course, yes, the technology is helping, but the experience that you are now delivering to those people, where previously they may not have been getting the full experience, the full Suttons experience, they were only getting kind of parts of that, have absolutely made an impact on that tenure.
Absolutely, yeah, without doubt.
Yeah, that's
without doubt. Yeah.
Ash, do we have any questions from any of our attendees?
Some you've already covered, which is awesome. And then just mainly, will this be recorded and will we share it after? Which, yes, we will. So obviously, people are keen to share this within their business. There's been some really awesome stats. So we'll definitely make sure we get that out.
Excellent. Fantastic. Well, if there are no other questions for either myself with HR on Board or Eric from Suttons, thank you again, Eric. It was wonderful to have you. It's always really great to hear customer stories and learning more about what their experience was pre-technology. Not obviously HR on Board have played a part in that, but pre-technology and post-technology, and just the impact that's not only having to your internal customer, which is your HR team, who sound they absolutely love HR on Board, but obviously your external customer, which is your new hire. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
No problem. It's been a pleasure.
Excellent. So if there's no other questions, we will finish the webinar. We will absolutely be sending this out as a link. We will definitely be touching base next week. And if anyone would like to learn more about HR on Board, there will be a contact email for you to get in touch. So thank you all. Have a wonderful day. And thank you so much for joining us today for the webinar.